Hi, everyone. This is Kiss My Mic, and welcome to my podcast. So, we're just weeks into 2025, and wow, it's been an eventful year already, to say the least. We started off the year with a slew of terror attacks in many major cities in the United States, including New Orleans and others. And it was devastating, just to start off the year with that terror and horror from those attacks. And then pretty soon, and we're still going through it now, the wildfires in California really affected millions of people in California, and they are still grappling with the disaster even as we speak. And then lastly, we have just seen the inauguration of President Trump. And, this podcast, on my podcast, or even on my social media, I try to stay away from posting anything political, but, I am an LGBTQ individual. I am a Filipino American, first generation immigrant. I am now a U.S. citizen. I've been a U.S. citizen since 2013. My mere existence, I feel like, is a political issue, so I have to speak up and speak out, and I'm not going to sit idly while the new administration is trampling my identity, my community's rights, my rights as an LGBTQ, all the opportunities that, we've been fighting for minority communities like Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders. So I'm going to get into specifics, right? I'm not just going to use talking points from like liberal, news segments. I watch those, yes, but I also read. A lot of my sources that I'm going to use today are actually direct from the whitehouse.gov website. And I'm going to go through specifically the provisions that Trump have already executed through his executive actions that I know are going to directly impact not just myself as an LGBTQ individual and also a Filipino immigrant, but also the members of my communities. So listen up. Let's dive into the specifics. First up, let's talk about the revocation of Executive Order 13988 issued on January 20th, 2021 by President Biden. By the way, this is just one of the hundreds of actions from Biden that are now being revoked by President Trump. You can check out the whitehouse.gov for a more detailed list. In this episode, I'm only going to talk about a few of them, but mostly along the lines of really the ones that are stripping away the protections for LGBTQ individuals against discrimination. I'm also going to talk briefly about some of the initiatives that have also been revoked that were aimed at improving equity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, and overall, a little bit on the crusade against the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So let's talk about the first one, Executive Order 13988. So this one, at its core, it was a groundbreaking step toward ensuring that no one in the United States could face discrimination based on their gender, identity, or sexual orientation. This one was revoked. The guiding principle of the policy from Biden was simple, that everyone or every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, free to live without fear, no matter who they are or whom they love. In practice, it means that people could work, like LGBTQ people, for example, could work and build their careers without fear of being fired, demoted, mistreated, simply because of who they love or who they express themselves. And by the way, it's not just affecting LGBTQ, it's also affecting women and other minority groups. Aside from employment practices, the implication of this, we also can see in healthcare, because of this protection. Individuals could seek medical care without worrying about discrimination based on their gender, identity, or sexual orientation. In housing, it's the same thing. Everyone can have the right to secure a roof. Imagine if you're an LGBTQ person and you're buying a house and your real estate agent is racist or has racial, discrimination bias against you for, sorry, not racial, sexual bias based on your gender. I mean, this provision from Biden actually protects the individuals from being discriminated. But right now, under Trump, that's no longer the case. So it mattered because Biden signed the order in 2021. It actually represented a significant progress for LGBTQ rights. It was a step toward addressing years of systemic discrimination and protecting the fundamental rights of individuals to live authentically. And so with the new Trump administration, what's happening now, with the protection being revoked, we are now being thrown backward into a time when discrimination against LGBTQ plus people was legal. One example that I can remember, the infamous gay wedding cake case back in the day. I think it started somewhere in Colorado. There was a same-sex couple that was denied service by a cake shop because of the owner's religious beliefs. Now imagine that kind of discrimination happening again, not just for wedding cakes, but in situations where it could seriously disrupt lives. I talked about a real estate agent if you're looking for a house. I mean, if you're living in the country like myself, I'm here in North Carolina. I mean, we could be discriminated, based on our sexual gender identity. A plumber, for example, if we hire a plumber and he or she declines or they decline to provide services because of our gender identity, me and my husband's identity, it's now sending a message that it's fine to do what the discrimination is in again. This isn't progress, it's regression, and it's scary, horrendous, and disgusting. So, this is just one example of the specific provisions that I want to talk about that are coming out of the Trump administration. This one is really the revocation of the protection for LGBTQs against discrimination. It's a big thing. And honestly, it's scary because it's just going to set precedents for many more things that can happen in the future. I mean, if you look at the White House website right now, they're scrubbing off anything and everything that relates to LGBTQs. I mean, this executive action from Biden is just one of them. There's many others. I mean, I would encourage you to take a look and read up. And most importantly, what can we do? What can we do? We must stay alert, first and foremost. And what I'm doing now, I'm trying to raise awareness because I believe that we must stay educated. And above all, we must fight back. So these protections are vital, not just for LGBTQ individuals, but for the values of dignity, respect, and equality that we all deserve. So there's the first one. All right. So let's talk about another important policy that's been revoked. This is Executive Order 14031, signed by President Biden on May 28, 2021. And this one specifically to protect the minority communities, including Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And this one came about as a response to the surge in anti-Asian hate crimes, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. But we all know that racial inequity affecting these minority groups, including Blacks as well, has existed long before COVID. And so the key components of the policy, this particular one for the AANHPI, it includes the creation of the President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. So there's a committee or a commission that gave representatives from these communities a seat at the table, direct access to the President to provide counsel and advice on matters affecting them. I mean, if you are an AAPI, and if you've seen social media posts about some representatives from the community being invited to the White House, that was an example of how this commission works, because they are there to provide counsel and advice to the president and his administration to enact certain provisions that will uplift and continue to promote, the Asian Americans and other minority groups. So, the commission also focused on addressing systemic barriers that we know exist, including identifying and dismantling inequities in federal policies, programs, that negatively impacted these communities, fighting racism and promoting equity and equality. So what's happening now? I mean, you've seen the inauguration, right? You've seen who the people were there with the president. He was surrounded by the tech bros. So basically, the impact to us as a minority communities, we sort of lost that access, that ability to have that discourse directly with the president so that our issues are being looked at, being addressed. I mean, Trump himself said that he wanted us to be colorblind. But in reality, our identities are like our race, our sexual identity are really part of who we are. And, I think it's just crazy to think that we're just colorblind. Anyway, so what's happening now? Again, with the revocation of this executive order, these communities have lost their direct line to the president, the platform that empowered their voices to address critical issues like racism, equity, and representation gone. And as I've mentioned earlier, who will be advising the president now? It's a tech billionaires. It's an oligarchy, the powerful and the privileged, and once again, marginalized communities are being pushed aside. So I've covered the two sort of executive actions from Trump already, but to me, the most alarming development yet, in my opinion, is really Trump's executive action on gender. So let's talk about this. It's this particular executive action defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. It's kind of quite a mouthful. And like extremism, really. So what does this policy do? I mean, this is actually, quite simple, right? Like he even spoke about it during the inauguration, but basically it's the action that establishes the United States official policy to recognize only two sexes, male and female, completely rejecting the concept of a gender identity. In fact, according to the website, there's definitions there. Sex is defined as an individual's immutable biological classification as either male or female. And then gender identity is essentially dismissed as an ever-shifting concept and therefore replacing the biological category of sex. So they want to go away with the notion of gender identity. To me, why I think this is so dangerous is because the policy denies the lived realities of millions of LGBTQ plus individuals, including myself, including a lot of, the members from the trans community. Here's what it means in practice, right? For example, from the perspective of trans lives, essentially what this means is that the trans individuals, their identities are being erased. They would be forced to conform to their sex assigned at birth in all federal documentation and legal definitions. I mean, for example, someone like Caitlyn Jenner, a well-known trans woman personality who, by the way, is a Trump supporter, and I'm not sure if Caitlyn has officially transitioned yet. I haven't kept up with that news. But based on this provision, Caitlyn would now officially be recognized as male under this policy. Just think about it for a second. Think about if you know any trans person, what kind of emotional distress they would endure being forced to go back into male bathrooms. If it's a trans kid, I mean, oh my gosh, like I fear for those trans children, and I am with you. I'm thinking about you, and I support you. Think about like high school situations, like they're, being forced into using, male bathrooms. And I know people, like the bathroom issue is just, there's just so many opinions about it. It is an important issue, by the way, But to me, it goes beyond that, right? Including kind of the identity, used in passports, to legal protections, that trans people identities would be invalidated. For me, I think this is a dangerous precedent. By stripping away recognition of gender identity, this executive action from Trump, it really, in my opinion, lays the groundwork for further attacks on LGBTQ plus rights. One of my concerns and worries really is, for example, what's stopping Trump from declaring that a marriage is only for biological men and women, and therefore, in terms of what's at stake, I am an LGBTQ plus person. I am married to my husband, and I'm scared. And I know a lot of my LGBTQ friends are scared as well. And for the trans individuals, my friends, this policy feels like erasure. For gay and lesbian couples, it raises the fear that marriage equality and the rights we fought so hard to secure could be next. This policy sends a clear message. LGBTQ plus individuals are not equal. It strips away rights, benefits, recognition, relegating us to second-class citizens, if not at all. So to me, overall, these are the three issues I want to talk about. I want to be data-driven. I want to be based on facts. It's not a snapshot from Occupy Democrats or one of those websites. This is directly from the White House website. And really, I'd encourage you to read. Think about the implications, and why must we react? To me, these provisions, they aren't just policy. It's an attack to our identities, our rights, and our humanity. It's unjust, it's humiliating, and completely out of step with the values of equality and freedom. So what can we do? The first step is education. Really read up, look at all the specific provisions. It's crazy to base your convictions on just things you see on social media or even on news. I think it's not enough. We have to really know kind of what's at stake here, and specifically how the current administration is erasing our identity, the actions. Let's attack them based on the actions that they are doing against us. So, in addition, we must spread awareness and mobilize to protect our rights. This is really this podcast episode. The first one in 2025, my very first episode, it's really a call for advocacy. That's really all. And I feel so compelled in my heart that this is what I need to do. Really, it's a call to reflect and fight. And finally, I want to end this podcast by reading the sermon of Bishop Marian Buday. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. After the inauguration, and you've seen this on social media for sure, right? The MAGA Christians are actually attacking her for really spreading the words that, in my mind, are, or what being Christian really means. So it goes like this. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country. We are scared now. The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the massive majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and they're good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, gurdwara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. To my LGBTQ plus families, fellow AAPIs, other members of minority communities, the message is clear. They are attacking us. We have to fight. We cannot sit idly anymore. I think this is a call to action to really speak up, speak out, learn as much as we can, educate ourselves in terms of what they're actually doing based on policies, based on real data, and equip ourselves with the knowledge. And most importantly, fight. We need to fight, so that we can maintain equality and fight for our equality that we all deserve. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. Till the next time, goodbye.